But crime is nothing new. Why, when I was growing up in Stillwater, we had more than our share of gunplay and robbery. The threat of prison didn't deter street toughs back then, and it doesn't now. My initiative to revitalize poorer urban areas, however, holds a real promise. With local rehabilitation and education programs, our young people are getting the opportunity to live up to their full potential and to resist turning to drugs, pimping, and vandalism to get by. Hughes says our children are a lost cause, but as your mayor, I refuse to give up hope. I hope you'll consider giving me your support in this upcoming election. Together, you and I can continue to build a better future for our young people and ourselves.
Paid for by the people to re-elect Mayor Winslow.
Who was speaking was the late Marshall Winslow. Although he was never seen, he was the real hope for the change in Stillwater, if it was a chance to make that happen. But the lane he took time, along with things already being on the path that's hard not to repeat. Before Julius was introduced, he already was in gang life going all the way back to the 70s, having to learn firsthand exactly what he was getting himself into. But as many know, he wasn't the leader. A good friend of his, Benjamin King, was. Keep this in mind to what's not talked about to how Julius became. Benjamin King leading, Julius' job was to act on the leadership. All was well up until a death in the gang, something he blamed Ben for. Around this time, it's obvious this death was something new for him, and the fact he lost someone close so early definitely changed him, making him cold.
I don't regret much. You make your choices, you live with them. But if I could take anything back, it would be the way things ended up with Angela. It was all fun and games for her. She wanted to be just like Benjamin. I shouldn't have let her get in so deep.
Saying how this Angela wanted to be specifically like Ben King, while speaking on regretting letting her get in too deep, shows something that goes overlooked, which was Julius having an inferiority problem. For the fact alone, she didn't want to be like him, along with blaming Ben. Being in the Vice Kings originated from protecting their neighborhood, something Julius was heard to take pride in, especially with again losing someone who was a casualty at war. He also ends up revealing why he couldn't fit in anymore, which is of course telling to his life.
When the Vice Kings stopped being about protecting Sunnyvale, I knew it was time to get out of the game. I was hoping that Benjamin could keep the city locked down, but years passed, and it ended up being the same old shit.
Watching Ben, he wanted to be that, which was being a leader, but not like how things became. Julius just wanted to protect his hood, while Ben saw more past that early. But with that being the case, it's why he chose to lead a gang. Seeing the gang move past what it originally was, getting into drug dealing and everything in between. Seeing their motives become senseless, and the fact he didn't have a say in any of it.
I thought the Vice Kings was a cautionary tale that I learned something from. That if I built a new street gang, I could control it, not make the same mistakes King did.
At this point, he looked for change to cope with feeling like he fell short. Moving to Saints Row before how it looked, the church alone symbolized the area being a good one, along with what Julius started to look at for change, which was religion, something that'll make more sense later as a way he coped. The Vice Kings and the Cardinales were bad enough on the streets. I feel as if it didn't take long for Saints Row to decline. When the church got abandoned due to violence, prostitution, drugs, at this point he had to stick around, not having the ability to avoid the streets, after a domino effect was in effect. Not to sound away, but if you think about it, Julius took a sacrifice walking away with no money, was why he was squatting at the church in the first place. But as many know, the Westside Rollers making the third gang to be born in Stillwater and having to see the same thing he left, of course he wanted to do something about it. Again, compare what he would do versus what he saw on a day-to-day. Keep in mind he knew what came with what he's getting back into, and seeing where he felt where King went wrong, and again, he left to become a leader so he can control, something to still keep in mind.
Not only did the Cardinales regain their strength, but a new gang, the Westside Rollers, also tried to make a name for themselves. For a while, these three gangs tore each other apart. But once the violence spilled into Saints Row, I had to do something. Like Benjamin, I gathered the people of this neighborhood and gathered them in this very building. Here is where the 3rd Street Saints were born.
The name of the gang alone showed what he was trying to do and be for Stillwater, a saint, to come off better than, especially with trying to find God back at the church at some point. All that was left was to find a color. The reason he went with purple was for the fact if you mix blue, which was the Rollers, and the red being the Cardinales, you get purple. This alone still shows him comparing, while trying to hold someone to blame, feeling like he could do better. And with him being talked into getting on board in the 70s, he used the same way that made him interested, he does the same for others. This time around though, looking for a different outcome, sadly repeating the cycle he played a part in. He was able to get members that followed him, be in his past, but the row still was a contested area. Right before he was introduced, his tactic he makes shows, which was letting everyone else fight, then swooping in, something he even does with his own.
You okay, player?
Due to his past, as we see, he didn't even have to fire a shot.
Julius, let's move.
That don't look so bad. You should be fine. That's Troy. You can thank him later.
Again, his past was enough. The cross chain on his neck shows his cope mechanism to the entity he built over time. Saving the player though, he makes one thing clear.
The row ain't safe no more, son.
But right after, we start to see the other side of what he wants out of creating the Saints at this point.
We got gangs fighting over shit that ain't theirs.
Saying how gangs right now are fighting for something that isn't theirs goes to show him not learning anything on his hiatus. He's right, but only if what he said was the other way around. Him saying this mattered more in his era, when the Cardinales came from nowhere and took control of the city. But not learning the real, which is fighting for something they didn't even own, what he really was saying, what they were fighting for isn't theirs because he wanted it. Along with, again, wanted just to call the shots and take the control, better than what he's seen. And in a way, to make this happen was what he's about to say to the player, which was actually make someone feel involved, coming off as a saint, even taking his time to rope the player in, coming off as the one that's above, likable, etc. Something he never was, and something he forces from this point forward.
And you in the way? They don't care if you represent or not.
Julius, this is no time to recruit.
We need all the help we can get, son.
No, we need to get our asses out of here.
In a minute.
This alone, he already made another naive soldier. Him doing this will continue this ever-way lasting life.
Look, the row's got a problem. Come to the church when you want to be a part of the solution.
His eagerness to rule will be shown by the time he set up a meeting to fully take over the row, continuing to show the reason the Saints were born. Again, for the fact he'd rather be the one in charge, not having his chance or having it in him before. He even downs the other gangs, comparing them unfavorably, showing his inferiority problem.
Every motherfucker here knows what we need to do. Now those bitches be riding around here thinking they own these streets. I don't care what flags they flying. Rollers, Carnales, Vice Kings. No one's making this nigga scared to walk the road.
And using the player for his speech, spinning him to be scared to walk the road, was again to make everyone else feel involved. As many know, something that worked, while getting approval for himself in the process.
We about to lock this shit down right now.
All right, yeah!
Yeah!
Fuck yeah!
But of course, he then would say something telling to never being in this position.
Welcome to the 3rd Street Saints. Let's get down to business. If we're serious about taking back the road, we gotta let those motherfuckers know what time it is. Now you break it down, and it's all about respect. Get enough of it, they're gonna back off, and we're gonna move right on in.
Breaking everything down, and it still being about respect, of course showed that's what something Julius liked to receive. He's planning what he wanted to other people's head so he can finally get it and reap the rewards. He even went to give his gang clearance to do the same thing he left the Vice Kings for in the first place. It wasn't a problem this time around because he can make the call.
We got some friends in town that could use some help. Give them a hand. Of course, you can always drop any motherfucker flying the wrong flag. So long as word gets out that the Saints is on the road, I don't give a damn how you do it. You feel me?
The specific tactic was something he still did to get the road, which was again arrived during the other games going at each other. Even going to tell the player as long as he sticks by him, he will be fine. Basically telling them to follow him no matter what, then he will be okay.
Don't worry, player. You stick with Troy and me, you'll be fine.
But during this, he continues to say something telling regarding this whole takeover.
We did it, player. Saints Row's ours again.
Saying how the row belongs to the Saints again shows more why he's again eager, after of course losing the area and not being respected, then going to set up another meeting.
Don't think I'm finished with you yet, though. I'm holding a meeting at the church. Swing by when you can.
During this, he of course assigns the lieutenants to the 3 gangs, but how it starts will show him trying to pursue perfection, because again, him comparing himself to others he can find. Although he couldn't match these different gangs, something he says himself.
Listen up, people. I got some serious shit to discuss. Yeah, we cleared out the road. You think for a second that's gonna stop them? Unless we wipe all these motherfuckers out, they're gonna keep coming. And they ain't gonna be happy. It ain't gonna be settled until the Carnales, the Rollers, and the Vice Kings ain't nothing but a memory.
As far as who he assigned to these gangs is telling us well. Also something to add, the lieutenants, whether if they were smart or just bloodthirsty, this was them naturally, something Julius didn't have. But Julius leading, as long as they didn't outperform, they was cool. Prime example, Dex. Julius has him in charge of the Carnales. Keep in mind this gang was around for so long, but back trying to perfect this gang, he gives them the task while still about to say how they can't compete. Even with a gang this big though, Dex is okay, leading Julius to move on being okay.
Dex, you got the Carnales. Ever since they hooked up with the Colombians, it's like they own this town. And with that drug money rolling in, we can't compete. Be smart how you move against them. The Lopez family been running that gang for 30 years. There's a reason they still around.
Got it.
Next, he moves on to Troy.
Troy, you dealing with the Vice Kings.
Not a chance.
Fuck you say?
The little self-worth and control he had is why he was taken back to Troy not being okay with going against the VKs. He then would say something telling during the whole VK topic conversation.
Anyone but them.
You scared of going against Benjamin King?
Julius not having to be tested, for the fact alone he's the one telling everyone around him what to do. That's why he downs Troy, calling him scary. Although his hypocrisy is about to be shown when Johnny butts in, someone who was natural with what he did.
Man, fuck that. I'll take King out.
Johnny, it's not that simple.
Things being not that simple when it's up to him continues to show his inferiority complex. Being that he knows the Vice King's leader, he even takes himself out of the equation after Johnny makes a good point, being that that's the only thing he could do to make his point.
Bullets still kill motherfuckers, right? Doesn't get much simpler than that.
Keep an eye on your boy.
I don't need a fucking babysitter, Julius.
Keep an eye on your boy.
Who's got the rollers?
I do.
Not even knowing about the Rollers, but still figured he could do better shows the same thing, even going to say how it's the Saints' time, which means it was his time.
I asked Lynn to hook up with the Rollers. We don't know much about these fuckers, so I wanted one of us on the inside. Once we're done here, go talk to one of these guys. They'll have something for you to do. It's our time now. Let's get this shit started.
Making everyone feel like they're playing a part to something good. When it was time to do the work, he wasn't barely around. Again, so he won't be tested, but everything he had done was for him, but to say the least, all petty things. When it came down to the Vice Kings, him being a hockey fanatic was why he had the player take over a certain spot.
A bunch of Kings bookies are meeting at a parking garage to discuss rigging games. Don't let any of them walk away from the meeting. No one fucks with my hockey game.
He even sent the player to tag a Carnales spot just to be seen and again receive acknowledgement.
I don't think the Carnales have gotten the message that the Saints are here to stay. Tag up their refinery. I want those bitches to see our sign wherever they look.
And with the Rollers knowing their car guys, their cars were destroyed for no other reason than trying to load what they had.
Lynn found a storage garage where the Rollers stashed some of their high-performance cars. What do you say we find out how good their insurance is?
But even with all that, he showed him being satisfied with the results, even if things was senseless, being that these things was his call, along with things working in his favor. The Rollers was a good example to his ways, not realizing things were about to get real for him in the Saints. Again, he was okay with the senseless stuff.
Sup, player? Lynn's been saying you're doing a hell of a job when it comes to the Rollers. Keep it up. That Lynn? Don't let me hold you up.
But as we know, Lynn would then die. But here we see what Julius does to not be responsible or at fault into how things played out.
Did you catch the news? Looks like they found Lynn's body floating in the river this morning. Sorry, dog. I know you did everything you could.
Saying how the player did all he could do was him making the player feel like he fell short, having someone to blame other than him. Even brings how he felt Johnny would take Lynn being killed, just to not again be held responsible or show that it was his fault how things happened.
Johnny's gonna take it pretty hard when he finds out. You can bet your ass that he's gonna be calling for blood.
He then would of course try to retaliate, bringing the player with him.
We're not gonna wait for them to hit us again. We're taking the fight to the Rollers.
Yeah, well, we might have to rethink that plan.
What's going on?
Word is, every roller that Price could find is headed this way.
How much time we got?
Shit, man, I don't know. My man says they're moving pretty fast.
Alright, you coming with me. We got some Rollers to fuck up.
But as we're going to see, he will fall short into making this happen, continuing to put the blame on the player after Julius does what he does, which was crash his car, but again putting the blame on someone other than him.
But coming up on Price, let's take that motherfucker out. should buckle your seatbelt.
He then would cope with messing up, but then going to put the responsibility on the player to take this guy out.
Just the same, one getting away ain't bad. Let's get out of here, player. We'll deal with Price once you get patched up.
So of course the rollers would be finished. This working out how he wanted. Again, he was okay with everything that happened on the outside.
That was a hell of an explosion. You okay, player?
I got ran over by a motherfucking truck. What you think?
Oh, quit being a bitch.
He tells the player this, trying to overlook the cost of getting rid of this game. Being that things worked out, he also came like that to him as a reminder to keep him in his place and not have thoughts. He then would divert his attention to the Carnales. Instead of just taking them out though, he wanted their drug trade, still thinking he can do better, but things quickly turned from what things were, showing how he abandoned what he sold on to others and no one could tell him about it.
Yo, man, just between you and me, I was fine with cleaning out the road, but getting into this drug shit ain't cool, all right? Someone should talk some sense into Julius.
With the lost Carnales though, Dex had it all covered, saying that to say he became inferior to him, not even having much input, especially with him sending the player to tag the hideout earlier, showed the different directions. One guy really on his job, while another guy acted like it. He would find out exactly what Dex was making happen, but with this of course will show something telling, after again not feeling like the leader doing what he did.
Julius, I don't see what the big deal is.
The deal is you went to talk to the Colombians without me.
We didn't even get to meet him, Jules.
And don't call me Jules, you haven't earned it.
Fine. Julius, you put me in charge of the Los Carnales. Shit, now you got me saying it.
Dex, do your job. Don't think you're bigger than you are. When it comes to the Colombians, you call me. Understand?
Yeah.
All right. Now that that's settled.
But as we're going to see, even what he goes to do to be accepted by the Colombians was this extreme way, not having to deal with it.
So how did that meeting go with Julius?
He just got back from a sit-down with Orejuela, and they came to an interesting agreement. If we can get back all the drugs the cops seized, the Colombians are willing to work with us exclusively.
Get the drugs back from the cops? How the fuck are we gonna do that?
We're taking out the police station.
Are you out of your fucking mind? They'd lock the place down before you get anywhere.
It's Julius's plan. He called it, we have to go with it.
Down the line, Orejuela would then ask him something he didn't know the answer to, which was being able to move forward and have a real goal.
Little, I'm beginning to think we can do business.
I'm glad we can work things out.
So, how exactly would you like to move forward?
Things were about the road, being that not controlling it made him look bad, which is why he was quick to jump on the other gangs all the way up until this point. Again, not having a real motive to why he got into certain things. Orejuela even calls him out subtle, like going to say how he's acting like he was doing the difference, although this is about to come off as a compliment.
That's where Angelo lives with his woman. Consider this payment for your act of good faith. When you go over there, I'd appreciate it if you didn't kill the señorita. We'll be in touch.
Things going to plan. Lastly, the Vice Kings was next. But what this reveals everything that the other two gangs couldn't, being because of the history, especially with him now being at a certain spot himself. When Benjamin found out the Saints started to cause trouble for him, even he was spit back to how Julius did it.
Everybody calm the fuck down. We ain't gonna start a war every time some motherfuckers act hard.
We gotta talk about the Saints. They've taken Prawn Court.
How did this happen?
How the fuck you think it happened?
But with this, they used the law they had in their pocket. A new tactic. Julius, thinking he was a step ahead, he sends Johnny and the player to kill one of their lieutenants.
I talked to Julius, and he gave me the okay to go in with a crew. Now I'm heading back to the church to get strapped.
But here, as many note, it was revealed to the two that Ben let him think he was in control.
You 3rd Street motherfuckers think you so smart. Well, check this out. We ain't impressed. Hell, the only reason you got as far as you did was because King let you.
And of course, Johnny got shot because of Julius not doing this before and just jumping the gun. You would think him knowing Ben that he was smarter than that. But no, that was the problem. For the fact alone, he couldn't do good or be smarter than him and Julius had. After this, to get Johnny back, he would say something telling regarding to not even being in this position before.
You think it'll work?
It has to. Sit down, son.
It had to work for the fact alone he had no other way to actually get him back. Then going to give player clearance to do what he knew he would want to do.
Every day that bitch gets driven to the construction site in a limo, then sneaks off to get a freak on with Warren before she goes back home to Tony. While she's busy sucking cock, you deal with the chauffeur and take his place. When she's done wiping her mouth, she'll have you drive her back. Once you're at Tony's, it's all up to you.
But finally, with the Kings fighting the monster itself, put King in a spot to have to reach out to Julius personally. This alone made Julius go back to his role he had with King, even revealing why he wants to save him in the first place.
Where's Gat? Fuck! Listen carefully, player. Benjamin King just called. It seems like one of his boys got a big head and tried to take him out. He's pinned down in the park right now and needs some help. Now what happens to King may not mean shit to you, but him and me, we got history. I owe King from way back in the day.
On one side, he felt he owned King from when they ran together, for the fact he was able to walk away. But keep in mind why Julius left in the first place, saying not to say it wasn't on good terms, leading to other reason why he's about to have a player rescue him to be more important than the past, especially with how things ended up with the two to now.
And he ain't gonna eat it if I can help it.
Julius saying this was him saying how he wanted to be the guy that killed Ben. Not being a part of his possible death is why he's so eager, saying not to say the reason he wants him saved so it can be his call to make. In a way, that's what Julius owed him from back in the day.
You're gonna go out there and save his ass. Understand? I ain't fucking around, player. You bring King back here safe, you feel me?
So when he saved Ben, someone that led him, Julius having his own now, regardless of the losses and somewhat control, the ball was in his court. He even starts it off by throwing a slight jab at King, reminding him what he did to have him crawling to him.
Looking good, Ben.
Been a long time, Jules.
Sorry about Anthony.
That was business. Let it go.
So what's the plan?
We kill Tanya, and I get back to business.
I don't think so, Benjamin.
Again, the ball was in his court, even with the other two here as well. Julius still, of course, still wanted his place, and with their history, being even still being around, he couldn't do that, being that he was never the one.
What?
I said no.
As we saw, Julius puts his foot down, being able to say what things were going to be, something confirmed he never did.
You alive, we straight. But the Vice Kings, they're through.
Then kill me. Quit wasting my goddamn time.
Well, you got a choice. You can keep your fucking pride and die right now. Or you could be a man and walk away.
When did you get the balls, Jules?
What's it gonna be?
I ain't walking away.
Fair enough. Johnny?
I ain't walking away until I deal with Tanya.
But King actually giving him confirmation that in the way he forced him to give up, it's about to give him the I won feeling after being inferior to him at a time. Even snapping on Johnny having the self-esteem and real control to fully do it.
My nigga. Johnny, put the damn gun down. Now you understand this ain't just about Tanya, right? We finishing the whole crew.
Yeah, I know.
So let's get to it. All right, player. You gonna be Mr. King's wheelman.
You ready for this, son? Let's go.
Good to have you back, Benjamin.
And again, this would be another dig he throws. For the fact alone, him being back, things were up to him. Having him back resulted into fully having the city, something Ben even had a hard time accepting, but that's for another video. King remembering Julius before what he was, at this point he even revealed things Julius did, showing the things he wasn't proud of.
So does Julius ever talk about growing up in Sunnyvale? What? You thought he was from the road? The problem with bearing the past is that you forget about it. You know what I'm saying?
He didn't speak in his past much because he was of course running from it, especially with where he is now. Ben even revealed he didn't come up with the same thing he flipped to make look like he was doing things different, even giving the player things Julius hadn't learned yet, something also for another time.
I bet Julius gave you the whole I don't care what flags are flying speech, didn't he? I wrote that shit years ago, and the motherfucker still hadn't forgotten it. You know that even if you wipe out the Vice Kings, it ain't gonna be over, right? There's always someone looking to take what you have. Some punk wants to make a name for himself. Some girl you fucked and never called back. The fact is, once you're in the game, the only way you're getting out is if you're dead or in jail.
At this point though, the Saints still were blinded. With no other gangs in the city, Julius finally could say what he calls the play and says, along with revealing being out for self.
We did it, player. 3rd Street owns this town. Now that's not to say shit didn't cost. And I ain't talking about what happened to Johnny's leg or losing limb. Those two were soldiers. They knew the risk. Hell, Johnny gets off on it.
Not worrying about Johnny or Lynn, of course went back to his spot. As we see, he's coping with being the only gang. He even revealed what was important to him, which was potential revenge, showing him only thinking about him, trying not to look bad at the bad.
We crushed a lot of families, player, and someday they're gonna holler at us. But believe me when I tell you, we did the right thing. With the rollers wiped out, Benjamin gone, and the Colombians in our pocket, there ain't gonna be a need for a gang war ever again. And in the end, that's gonna save a lot more lives than we took. So relax, player. You earned yourself a break. You've impressed the hell out of me, son. And I told the crew, you're gonna be my right hand. Hold up. Some berry just turned on his flashes. Yeah, player. I think I'm gonna have to call you back. This may take a while.
And just like that, it was over. This would pit Julius back in a defeat-like state. The lieutenants would think they're working to get Julius out, even killing the mayor on the way to re-elect, ironically being from Saints Row himself. But before he could even see that, he already would make a move to help himself. Right before he's able to get out, a phone call is made between him and Troy in jail. That goes back to something he fought with earlier, which was not having control.
How you doing, Julius?
I was doing better before I got arrested.
I wanted to talk to you about that.
I bet you do.
Listen, Julius, you've made some bad choices, but you're a good man. Let me help you out.
What do you want?
I want the Saints to be gone. Okay? Now there's two ways that can happen.
You can arrest all of us.
Or you guys can quit while you're ahead. Alright, this is my investigation. I can miss a few collars.
What are you saying?
Dex is out of the game, and you're in jail. If you can convince Johnny and your number 2 to drop their flags, the Saints will fall apart, and everyone goes home happy.
You don't think this will work, do you?
You think I like arresting my friends? Convince them to quit, and I won't have to.
There's no way that player's gonna stop.
Knowing that the player wouldn't walk away was again something he couldn't control. It's also revealed he couldn't control Dex after he leaves. All of this was why he did what he did. Being around threats in his head all the way down to being the only thing he can control. Something he says himself.
Make them understand.
Let's say I can. How do I know I'm going free?
I've already talked to the mayor. Hughes is willing to give you guys pardons.
I'll see what I can do.
The only reason he went this extreme in the first place was because he felt bigger to actually have the conversation with Johnny and the player.
What the fuck was that?
It was the only way.
I said talk, not set off a goddamn bomb.
Relax, Troy. The Saints are finished. Don't try to find me.
After blowing him up, Julius, going to tell Troy don't find him, went back to his inferiority complex, now trying to withdraw, something he always did when things got heavy. This time around, though, he's back at a low standing with himself, finding his way back to the road, still in the church, but not running things like how he did at the time he did. He even takes a job for Otor just to still be around his roots. Being heard lying to himself. The only reason he took this job was to still feel like he was something, along with being able to tell the story. Dex also working for Otor at the time, part of his last moments was ironically taking orders from a guy that he gave orders to. And as we're going to see, he still tries to deny the fact that he was the problem.
The fuck took you so long?
You ain't Dex.
Neither are you.
You look different, did you?
I didn't do shit to my hair.
You pulling a gun on me?
He's shocked for the fact he really didn't think he was the problem, along with still feeling superior. Player then will point out what he did, but Julius' response still will be telling.
Well, I didn't have time to plant a bomb in the church, so this I have to do.
You don't know what the hell you talking about.
Attempting to spin what the player realized goes back to his inferiority complex, even going to say he doesn't have to explain anything to him, although we know he does.
Why don't you educate me?
I don't gotta explain shit to you.
This is where we gonna have to agree to disagree.
Why don't you just put the gun down? We both know you're not gonna use it.
Not yet.
Stop!
I never thought I'd see you beg, Julius.
I'm not begging. I'm trying to talk some sense into you.
And going to say how he isn't begging, but trying to talk sense into him went back into the same thing to make himself feel better.
I'm done listening to your bullshit.
Put it together. Dex wanted us in the same place.
Yeah, why'd he want that?
Can we kill each other later?
With the two having to put their differences to the side, this put Julius back to a time where he called the shots.
Just like old times, player.
Yeah.
Jesus. I thought we were past this.
And feeling like he righted his wrongs was of course why he was shocked. But realizing he has to say more, he ends up revealing his side of things, which of course was telling.
Not by a fucking long shot.
Don't you get it? The Saints didn't solve a goddamn thing. Drugs were still being pushed. Innocent people were still getting killed. All we did was turn into vice kings that wore purple.
He's only speaking like this now because he had nothing to show for taking over Stillwater. As we saw, we didn't have a problem because at the time, for the fact that again, it was him to get the rewards. And the fact he looked at the Saints being vice kings that turned purple went back to him learning how Ben was able to run things before he left. The Saints wasn't legit yet, saying that to say this comparison was just another way to look better than whoever he compared himself to. And who he's comparing himself to now is the player. The play even makes a good point if Julius really meant what he said. But all this would do would again make Julius have a belief that he's the better than, and the rest is history.
Jesus Christ, you sound like a pussy.
I sound like someone who's not a sociopath.
You wanna be the killer with a conscience? Fine. Drop your flags and write a book like King, but you never should have came after me.
You telling me, if I would have asked you to walk away, you would have said yes?
Fuck no, this is my city.
Jesus, you haven't learned a goddamn thing.
Wrong. I've learned that being in charge is better than being a bitch who keeps his mouth shut and does what he's told. Your time's over, old man.
What's happened to you?
I woke up.
You owe me, player. If it wasn't for me, you would have died on that street corner.
If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been in a goddamn coma.
I guess that makes us even.
Not really.
At a point, Julius felt like making the Saints was to make a difference for the streets of Stillwater. The difference being that he would be the one in control of what happened. But he would be the exact opposite. He could never control anything for too long, from his lieutenants all the way down to his last moments. When he fell short, he put it on the ones that followed him and still felt them to be a threat to him after. And the fact the roots of the Saints came from comparing himself to King, he went back into what he knew for the wrong things. Even his last name Little symbolizes his battle throughout, being little, making his inferiority complex be the reason on his death.